a rival. I came in the league, went straight for the title. No time to idle. I'm finna get it, put that on a Bible. This is survival. Gotta treat every move made like the final. One by a mile. Nobody believe it, they all in denial. Look at me, look at me. Still in the show, that's the crook in me. They want me gone with the hook in me. Asking why is he here like I shouldn't be. I've been on grind since I old. 10,000 hours the motto. They see the bag is coming out and flocking to me like I won the lotto. Dancing with the devil, there's no recital. I'm killing competition, ain't no revival. I shoot it to kill it, I'm aiming for vitals. I'm showing no mercy when facing my rivals. Snakes in the grass, they getting exposed. I know they be lurking, I'm watching them close. Acting like friends, but really they foes. Saw they be scheming and said adios. Back with a vengeance, back on the grinds, back to the business. Ay, God is my witness, they watching my moves like shows they binging. Ay, best keep distance, all of my haters send best of wishes. I get to the bag with the quickness, no I don't need no assistance. Oh, yeah, no playing it safe. I said let's get it, you say not today. What can I say? If you ain't gon' go for it, get out the way. Yeah, got no time to waste. Can't be with me if you not at my pace. You not at my level, you not in my race. One foot on the gas, I'm pushing the brakes. Dancing with the devil, there's no recital. I'm killing competition, ain't no revival. I shoot it to kill it, I'm aiming for vitals. I'm showing no mercy when facing my rivals. Snakes in the grass, they getting exposed. I know they be lurking, I'm watching them close. Acting like friends, but really they foes. Saw they be scheming and said adios. Get it, don't mindset.
And for one final time, we go for Season 4 of 2022 here for Friday night Primetime on RaceSpotTV. And as you see, it is Daytona today. You have voted for the IMSA iRacing series to round out the season. And all season, you have been voting for which category of racing we've been going on this Friday night. And we're rounding off with probably one of the best combinations that there is on the platform. As we said, the IMSA series, the P2s and the GTDs going for battle for 45 minutes here around the Daytona road course. Myself, Cameron Roger, Zach Sweeney alongside me in the commentary booth, and Zach Johnson behind the scenes on the cameras as well. And Zach Sweeney is certainly a popular choice around here. Absolutely landslided with the vote, and I think it's going to be a great way to end the season.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the landslide vote, 79%. It was sheer domination. The people definitely know what they were wanting when they saw those voting series go up. We had sort of the Grand Prix series at Spa, the USF, and the NASCAR Class A as well. And just none of them, they all paled in comparison to what the people wanted. And that is the sheer aim of what we've had this season over the last sort of 3 months of Friday Night Primetime, is giving the people at home their say of where we go and what we do week in, week out. Of course, for season 3 we had the IRO4s. For season 2 we obviously had the mix of the stock car Brazils and the IRO4s as well. But this season, just to spice things up a little bit, go to different disciplines, and we've really succeeded there. I think we've ticked most boxes in terms of what we've done. We've had a bit of open wheel, we've had a bit of GTs, we've had a bit of off-road, and just something a little bit different. So sticking all of our fingers in different pies, and it is this season really has been a success, especially when you look back and think of the memorable moments that we've had. Yeah, it's I don't think there's any better way to round it all off.
Yeah, it was a great addition to the season to have this voting. Of course, if you are new to this and how we've done it here in season 4, well, in previous seasons we basically have followed one series every week on the Friday night to Friday evening for some entertainment. But we thought this season we'd get the community involved, we let them vote for which series we want, because of course on iRacing there's so many different series, so many different cars and tracks and all that sort of thing, that we want to try and show off all the different ones. So on the RaceSpot Discord, there's been a voting channel where you've been able to vote out of the 4 options every single week. And the cool thing is, out of the 12 weeks we've had in the season, we've had something different every single week. There's been obviously a couple of tracks that have come in a couple of times, like Road Atlanta we went to a couple of times, for instance, Road America as well. But in terms of the cars and the categories, it's been a great way to show off the different series that you can get yourself involved with on the iRacing platform as well. And as we say, for the IMSA series here, we have got the P2s and the GTDs. But Zach, it looks like in the GTD category, obviously GT3 cars, it looks like it's just the Porsche 911.
Porsche Cup time.
Yeah, all the drivers thinking that's the best one around here.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's unanimous. There's no variety at all. It's not the GTDs, it is the Porsche Cup. And, well, great way to really spice things up, guys. No one really opted to do anything different. So obviously the Porsche is the dominant force, because obviously you have got a variety of different GTDs available in iRacing. You've got the BMW, the McLaren, the Ford, God forbid, or the Ferrari, the Mercedes. You've got all of these different things, and everyone's gone for the Porsche. But I guess Daytona is a very, I don't really know. You do have to have a bit of both. You do need the nimbleness through the corners, but also you do rely heavily on some straight line speed as you go through around the banking and things like that. So you do need a well-versed car that can do a bit of both. And I think the Porsche definitely does suit both attributes of what is required of a circuit like Daytona.
Indeed, but the different attributes don't really come into it now. The fact that it's basically a spec series with everyone in the Porsche 911, which in some ways is actually quite good, because it means the field should be really close together. And talking of the field, we have got a lot of big names. We've got multiple drivers in the sort of 8K iRating on the field. We've got Gordy Mudge, Tyne, and we've even got Josh Thompson up there in the field as well. So lots of names you will recognise in that GTD category. And of course, over the course of a 45-minute race, a pit stop will be needed with the smaller fuel tank size in this series. So the strategy is going to come down to it a little bit as well when you make that pit stop.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is only a 45-minute race. However, the fuel settings have been altered slightly. I think for the P2s are sort of like 85% capacity. For the GTs, I think it's around about 50%-ish. And they definitely are going to have to take a pit stop at some point. It shouldn't be for tyres. It should exclusively be for fuel. But a circuit like Daytona, the timing of pit stops really can play a massive factor. While we're not going around the full super speedway oval, we are going through the road course. You still sort of, in a sense, need a buddy to slipstream off, because it is going to play a huge amount of time gain and time loss. So if you can be able to time your pit stops well to stay in tow with someone and to benefit off that slipstream, you are gonna be able to catapult yourself quite a way forward in the pit stop window. And if you somehow mistime it slightly to be by yourself, you could actually lose out quite a fair bit. So looking forward to seeing how the strategy develops. It's not a topic we've really had to mention over the course of this season, because most of our races have been sort of like 10, 20, 30 minutes at a push. We've never stretched all the way to 45 minutes and the requirement for a pit stop. So something a little bit different, again, to round off the season.
Yeah, it's great to see that coming into it. And of course, the way that Daytona races normally, especially you're going to see this in the GTD field, that the fuel-saving trains are going to be a little bit of a thing around here. As you were mentioning, that the slipstream is huge, because once you come out of turn 6 and 7 onto what is effectively the, NASCAR 1 and 2 through that first banking all the way down to the bus stop chicane, that is a massive sort of 2 kilometer straight. Then you go through the bus stop, and once again you've got another 2 kilometers coming all the way back to that start-finish line as well. There's going to be a lot of drafting, a lot down there, a lot of lifting off, trying to play the game. But at some point, you do have to start making the moves, especially if you're 5th, 6th, 7th in the pack. You're going to need to try and just slide your way forward over the course of the race. And as ever, the braking zone there into turn 1, I think, is going to be one of the main overtaking opportunities on this track. But here is the grid for today's race. We've got Soraya and Halliburton there on the front row, with Bo and Kovalak in behind, with Mlynek and Blocker there rounding out the top 6. Of course, this is your DPI category or LMP2 category, I should say, as it stands. Hilalo there with Valentina in the top 8, Styx and Leitner in the top 10, and Johnson and Ibrahim round out the top 12. Valero and Stewart there with Smith, and actually taking the final position in the P2s, with Bernard there being your pole position driver for the GTD category. Yoel Grandfors there, and Dimitrov there rounding out the top 3 for the GTD categories. Ferguson, Deeth, Tyan and Gordy Much there rounding out the top 22 on the grid, with Steinbraten and Castro in the top 24. Prandy and Kriskowski there in the top 26, with Watson and Caniero rounding out the top 28. Then we've got Cheryl JC and Garcia in the top 30. Then we got Gamez, Jevelak in the top 32, and Alaron Thompson starting from the back, with Hapala and White as well. 36 cars on the field, couple of P2s behind. They're going to have an interesting start. Rolling start, Zach Sweeney, as well as he comes towards the front under the lights to finish season. Do you have any predictions?
Not really, no. I think it's going to be very spicy, very close indeed, and it's too early to make predictions. It's going to be around about a 30-lap race here at Daytona to kick, to round off, actually, season number 4 of the 2022 season. What a season it has been. The final race all starts here, and honestly, I cannot wait. The big names that we've got, the series, the track combination that we have as well, it's just going to be mega epic. The rolling start here at Daytona, iconic as well under the lights. It just looks fantastic. I don't know. I've completely avoided the question for good reason, because we just don't know. This is going to be great.
Yeah, nice conditions out on the track as well. 24 degrees C. And as the safety car comes in, we'll be getting the green flag. Jose Soraya, their number 16 part on the inside, the black and red machine on the inside, up against the double yellow, is going to be leading the way. Will he be able to hold on from Kane Halliburton there on the outside? And we go green here for the final time this season, and a massive jump there at the start from Soraya. He's going to take the lead nicely, coming down towards turn number 1. The car's in behind, trying to go side by side in towards the braking zone. Halliburton, Bo there, actually getting up into that 3rd place as well. Mlynek is trying to stay up the inside there in that 4th position as we come through turn 2, the little chicane sequence as we get towards the International Horseshoe for the first time. LMP2's all coming through there rather nicely as Mlynek goes out a little bit wide. Back in the GTD field though, it looks like it's been a very good start there. Bernard keeping the way from Dimitrov there and Yoel Grandfors as we come through into the International Horseshoe. Any side-by-side action? Yes, we are in that midfield. Everyone coming through nicely though as the battles continue up into the midfield.
Pretty clean start for everyone getting settled into this race nicely. Still a long way to go, but so far so good. We still have the majority of people still pointing in the right direction. I think we've got everyone pointing in the right direction as we head through this long right-hander. You can see the P2s there just in the background, a shot a bit wide though, a bit of contact amongst some of the midfields. You can see that very blue Porsche having to struggle to get on the way. A bit of a dodgy rejoin. You can see that the other one having to dart to sort of the extremities of the circuit over the grass as well. Side by side as they go in towards this next left-hander that leads you on to the oval, but you can see there a bit of argy-bargy as they headed into the next braking zone. But all this has done is really screwed them up because of how crucial this slipstream is going to be.
Yeah, definitely watch out for this coming along as we get towards the first couple of laps of this race, where everyone is so close together. There is going to be a lot of drafting around this track, and of course it is so important. We've got the corners, but these 2 massive straights as we come back towards the front. Halliburton there just pulling out slightly but not going for an overtake as it stands. Got a 5-way battle at the front here with going all the way down to Mlynek there, who dropped down. Kovalak got up into 4th on that opening lap, and they continue their way down towards the International horseshoe. This is the part of the track where, of course, it's a little bit tighter. It's a little bit sort of more one line. You can overtake for sure, but you do want to be keeping the cars in check. And you can just see how much they're not pushing as much, because already it is turned into a top 7, top 8 battle with the cars behind catching up.
Around Daytona, you use a lot of the engine's capability. You're on full throttle for a good portion of the lap, particularly as you go around the oval. You are demanding a lot of the engine. You're using a lot of fuel. So just to sit in the slipstream, just to ease off a little bit, be able to carry the same speed while using a slight bit of less fuel, or be able to short shift. A bit of sideways moment there from Halliburton is going to tarnish his momentum. This could invite the 31 of Bo to have a look to the inside line. Indeed it is, and you can see Halliburton there beached on the outside. You can see Kovalak also trying to bridge that gap, but just having to tuck into toe does the number 8, not fighting that one too hard, and probably for the wiser, because yeah, as soon as you tarnish your momentum, you just have to accept that you're going to have to tuck in behind someone else and then move forward. The more you fight it, the more you're going to trip up over yourself, when in reality you are just going to be better off working with the other cars around you to think of the better objective. And that is a thing that is going to separate sort of the good from the great in this race. Doesn't matter how quick you are, if you can't work well with others, even though you're racing them for the win, whatever, yes, you're not necessarily friends or whatever, you do need to work mutually well with other drivers just to reach that better objective, because if you fight too hard for fourth early on, you're not going to be anywhere near the race lead come the check flag.
Absolutely. You've got to make your friends out there on the track. You've got to, just with your, I guess, body language as well, just your racecraft in general, you need to not necessarily actually make friends, but not make enemies is probably the better way of putting it. You don't want to be annoying drivers, especially in the early parts of the race. You want to be just showing that you are using your brain, you're going with the idea of the race. And as you see, this top, quite a few drivers, that's top 6, top 7 drivers still in this battle. They sort of spread out over the course of the first couple of sectors, but as they come around NASCAR 3 and 4, they just close all the way up, and especially in towards turn 1, where there's a bit of lifting, coasting going on and that sort of thing. And before you know it, everyone is back into one line. But as it stands, still got Soraya there leading out the front of the LMP2 category. Halliburton, who we've been following, down into that 3rd place, but pulling on his teammate of Kovalak behind.
Yeah, and just trying to settle into a good rhythm. Again, that is another thing that is of vital importance, is to get head down and settle in. We can see Bo really closing the gap to Soraya up in front, practically pushing him as they run through the very high-speed chicane, particularly in these prototypes, and they rejoin the oval as well. There's not really a sight for very much overtaken because of just how much speed you can carry through. Back to the Porsche couple, well, I guess the GTDs, I guess we'll call them that. So we're on board at the moment with Gordy Much, P6 at the moment, and just in tow of Teeth. But that's the thing, again, there's no difference in these cars, in these chassis. They're not being able to use the strengths and weaknesses of their cars to make the difference. Say if there was a BMW or someone else amongst this pack, they might be able to make the difference down the straight or through the infield section. Right now, everyone's in the same car, everyone's in the same boat, and there's just nothing anyone can really do to make that extra step up without really having to push the car.
Yeah, it takes a lot of driving talent and racecraft to do this. Gordy Much, who we're on board with at the moment, 6th place for the R8G driver, trying to get Deeth in front of him for that top 5. Just losing a few car lengths over the course of the middle part of the lap, but that will just close in and close in. As we get towards turn number 1, you can see the top 10 there really trying to stay close together as we're getting as Steinbratton in the background trying to get up position towards turn 1, coming to the outside. But a lot of these drivers really just go there to use up their extra space, maybe not try and make a move, but actually there are some moves there on the inside. Gordy Much now going side by side with Deeth there through turns 2. That's a very tricky position to be in, a bit of contact potentially between the two as we come down now towards the braking zone. Much still on that outside, trying to now go around of the car ahead. Is that Ferguson in 4th place? Much trying to get 2 places here. I think it's just going to slightly run out of space on the outside, but certainly a good run there from the R8G driver, up a position.
Yeah, for sure, using his real-life racing experience to aid him in full effect here in the virtual world of Daytona. Up now inside the top 5, which is definitely a good stepping stone. So using each sort of bit, each pass as a way to just slowly crawl his way up towards the front of the pack, which again is very crucial. You just have to get an overtake done, forget about it, move forward, head down, settle back into the slipstream, because we are seeing some very, very close pack racing. And while it isn't stock cars or anything like that, it is the same principle of just being able to pick your moments right, wait for the prime opportunities. As you see, this is Dimitrov on the back of our current race leader of Bernard in towards the very far chicane, pretty much tucked up under the rear wing of him, not quite close enough really to make a move. Or is that not being close enough, or is that being unwilling?
I think it's a little bit of just trying to keep it calm, keep it stable at the front of the pack, and definitely just following in behind. But you see, now we're on board with Ferguson, you're going to see the slipstream just ever so slightly, just centimetre by centimetre, getting closer and closer to the car ahead of your Grand Fours, and that is just going to just close this gap up as we get towards turn one. But as you see, as Ferguson going to have a run, goes towards just has a bit of a lift off. And you can see there, as you get so close, it sort of ramps up. It's not a linear curve. Although round the outside, Gordy Much goes up into fourth place. Is that going to be third on the exit as well with Grand Fours? No, just fourth place, 2 places in that same corner on the last 2 laps. So Much knows what he needs to be doing. But now coming back around the outside, there goes the number 2 machine of Ferguson, side by side on the exit between the 2. Much still on the outside though as he come up towards the King. That is going to be a very difficult position to be in, but Much certainly showing he wants to make up these positions. He wants to take the risks when everyone else is lifting off.
Wow, and again to the outside, braking so confidently late to saw his way to the outside of the West Horse. You might even have a look at Grand Force as well. Not quite got the drive around the outside for that one. Fight for the race lead as well amongst some of the P2s. We're going to cut to that in a moment because it is all a bit of carnage. You can see Milenek just trying to settle in. Soraya's relinquished the race lead to the number 14 machine, and we're having to avert our eyes up and down the field because of just how chaotic and carnage filled it is. Soraya a bit twitchy under the brakes as they head in towards the International Horseshoe once again with 36 minutes left to go in this race, but Milenek leads from Soraya, Bo, Halliburton and Leitner, your top 5. And wow, it really does spice up because again, in pack racing like this, it's such a short fuse that it doesn't take much of a spark to ignite everything.
That is crazy to see Milenek there down in 5th place a few laps ago, getting himself up towards the front, just showing how close. But look at that train of LMP2s coming now out through turn 6 and 7, a very important corner. But it is Milenek that leads the way in that Netrex car and doing a good job so far in this race. Of course, taking the opportunities and maybe capitalising on a couple of mistakes that we didn't see off camera. But Soraya still staying close as we come down towards the bus stop chicane, obviously newly renamed the Le Mans chicane here, and it's going to be a very important corner potentially in this race. But looks like the number 16 car there just lifting off a little.
Yeah, just settling in behind for the time being. Maybe for Soraya, it's their opportunity just to tuck in, use a bit of slipstream and save some fuel. While being out in front, you are demanding a lot more of the engine, though that slingshot effect from the car in front, from the slipstream, has allowed Soraya to really close the gap. But opting for a bit of bump draft, and that is very sketchy, particularly in these in this Delari's LMP2s, because of just how precise they are. Any slight deviation in sort of what they're doing, any small little wrong tap at the wrong angle can really send them around, particularly when they're going at such high speed. So Soraya going for the bump draft in there is a very, very risky tactic, but I guess the risk versus the reward is there. Though for me, definitely it's too high of a risk for quite a small reward that you're going to get from bump drafting.
Yeah, it's a tricky game, that the aero games and the tactics that come with that, because as we saw with Much in the GTD category, if you are a car ahead sort of lifting off, if the car behind you stays flat out, they're just going to absolutely fly past you. And it's worked for Much because he's got himself up into 3rd place in that GTD category, and it could obviously switch around the same in the LMP2s as well as they try and work their way into a sort of position. As we mentioned a bit earlier, there is going to be a pit stop for these drivers, as there are reduced tank sizes in this series. Even though it's only a 45-minute race, there will be some fuel needed in both categories, of course. And as we get towards this back straight, once again, the top 3 closing up, and the drivers behind will be trying to save that fuel to make their pit stop as short as possible.
That is going to be the deciding factor. How much fuel can you save by the time you get to the pit stop sequence? Because, yeah, as you say, the shorter the pit stop, the more time you are, or the less time you're going to lose. So relative to everyone else, the more time you're going to gain. Back to the GTDs. A field of Porsches at the moment really is kicking off. You can see there, here's Ferguson looking to the left-hand side of the International Horseshoe on Gordy Much, trying to go for the move on the podium. Not quite able to, though. Loses the outside momentum. Very, very risky in a pack like this because you leave yourself so susceptible for a dive bomb to the inside. It's like in karting, as soon as you leave yourself vulnerable on the outside, people behind you are going to try and capitalize on that inside gap. Luckily for Ferguson, though, not losing any places, side by side in the background as well, between a couple of cars trying to work their way through. But Gordy Much under a bit of pressure. Here is the number 11 machine of Blocker, unfortunately having off, able to get himself back going again, though unfortunately with the amount of time he's lost from that, you would have to say his chances of anywhere meaningful in this race well and truly over.
Yeah, not going to be getting the top positions today, but that I'm trying to see if there's some decent damage or not on that machine. But of course, either way, that's not going to be the way that he's going to be getting the top positions. Even in a 45-minute race, it's hard to come back from any sort of issues. And even in the longer races now, we just see these drivers just so consistent and so good. The level nowadays is so good. Yeah, even getting back 10 seconds is difficult, let alone 30-odd seconds. As we come down the back straight, the battles continue, of course, as we're about to get some lapping action here with the LMP2 pack getting on the back of the GTD field already after just a few laps of this race. Coming up towards 30 minutes to go, and you can just see the pace difference between the LMP2s. They can just go on that slightly higher line and just zoom all the way around the outside there of NASCAR 3 and 4.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see there just using the high line to the full advantage, able to lap past some of the GTDs very efficiently. One of the Porsches actually heading off to the left-hand side and coming into the pit lane, I do believe. Also a move for the race lead. Mililek and Soraya swapping places as they head in towards turn one. Soraya still having to just tuck back into second place. But honestly, I completely blanked the fact that the LMP2s are going to be lapping some of the GTs. It's a sort of a factor we haven't really taken into account that can really affect some of these cars, because if you catch those GTs at the wrong time, ideally, you're going to want to catch them at NASCAR 3 and 4, right? Because you've got a massive difference. You've got space to be able to lap them efficiently. The worst place you want to catch them is right now in this infield road course section, because if your rival catches them at 3 and 4, you get stuck behind them, say on your in lap or out lap going through the infield section. That can be really detrimental to your overall pace.
And also the Le Mans chicane as well on the back straight, because the LMP2s obviously absolutely fly through that corner with a lot more downforce, of course, and then the power on the exit. But if you catch a GT at the wrong time there and you can't get flat out on the exit, you lose that momentum not only there but all the way down to turn one. So there could be a car behind you, even a second behind you, and they will just absolutely motor onto you, because it's not just the time you lose now, it's the time you lose afterwards as well. And Lanek just about got there at the right time to not lose too much with Soraya, but you see the LMP2s actually trying to use that slipstream as well off the GTs. Every thousandth of a second counts, but Lanek actually worked out pretty well there. And of course, this will mix up with the potential slipstream gains that could have been happening in the GT category as well. So it's going to be a very interesting few minutes while these LMP2s come through the GT field for the first time.
Yeah, everyone's just trying to negotiate their way through. Of course, while this is just a pickup race, you might not be too familiar with your rivals. There's a Porsche having a bit of an off there to the right-hand side. Not entirely sure as to who that particular car is, but maybe. Oh, it is Ferguson indeed. He was fighting for the podium not too long ago. Now has escaped back to the pit lane. So obviously, this first lapping stage chaos has unfortunately caught him off guard, or he's made a mistake or whatever. But as I was saying, for the P2s, for the GTs, they may not be too well accustomed with their fellow drivers, and when it comes to lapping, you do sort of have to use your experience and sort of know who's who, how much space they're going to give, how predictable they're going to be. So for a lot of these guys, it is a real big step into the unknown.
That's why experience counts, and you're right. Sometimes when you're doing a series like this and you see a lot of familiar names, you've got to potentially work out who's going to be slightly more aggressive and who is not, and have that relative tab open to see the drivers around you and really just use that to your advantage. As we're getting, this is the awkward point now, the Le Mans chicane. You're going to see the LMP2s there in between the GTDs. They're going to be losing so much time, losing that momentum on the exit, and this could, of course, change the positions around and open up the gaps here and there. But as it stands, Dimitrov here is now a second and a half behind Bernard at the front of the GTD categories. We've just slowly been opening out as we've now done 15 minutes of the race. Could potentially come towards some pit stops in a few laps time for these drivers who want to come in that little bit earlier. But as it stands, everyone just trying to find their way, still trying to find their position as it gets very close there coming into turn one.
Yeah, that is, again, another big sort of difference between the P2s and the GTDs, or, well, the Porsches, I guess it should be said, because just the sheer aerodynamic capabilities between the two classes. But for Bernard, no complaints for him. There's a P2 going quite slowly, the number 24 of Harpala down in 10th place. Looked like he just didn't quite get the best of runs coming off going into the international horseshoe. But yeah, for Bernard, no complaints for him and the number one machine, able to clear off ahead of Dimitrov in what has been such a tight and still continues to be such a tightly contested pack in that in those Porsches. So to be able to get that sort of breathing space is really going to alleviate a lot of weight off his shoulders going for sort of this mid stage of the race, the middle third of this race, because he can just get his head down and focus on himself without having to worry about the carnage of sort of 6 or 7 cars behind him battling it out.
Indeed, it's going to be an important, actually, sort of 10 minutes of the race or so. The fact that the lapping has come into it, the fact that the pit stop window will be opening, obviously, at some point in the next few laps or so, for the ones who want to come in early, at least. So this is definitely quite an important part for the gaps that are potentially being made, but it's staying very close at the front. The top 3 in the LMP2 staying very close together. Marnek still leading the way, but just a few tenths back to Soria, and that was huge lifting there in towards turn 1 from Linek. The gap closed down massively for Soraya and also Bo behind just a half a second covering the top 3.
Really intense action that we're seeing amongst some of these Dallara P217s. They are putting on such a good show, and I'm sure it's going to continue, particularly as we get towards the end of this race where the stakes really do start to ramp up, because again, right now, similar to over racing, these moves don't count for as much as they will when we get closer to the checkered flag, because Bo could go for the move, sure. What does he gain from that, really? Because Soraya could very easily launch a counter-attack the next lap, or come the pit stops, take a shorter stop and get back in front anyway. So at the moment, moves don't really count for as much as they will when we get to sort of the final 5 minutes of this race. But yeah, it is still promising. It's showing good promise that they're remaining this close for this long. But yeah, Soraya definitely under a bit of pressure and trying to close the gap to Milnek, who is just in front at the moment. But yeah, only 5 tenths between each of our cars. And also don't forget for Hilhalo just in behind that number 7 team machine, and of course Leitner just in behind them. This could very easily materialize itself into a 5-car train for the lead, and even beyond that as well if they continue to fight.
Yeah, the good thing for these guys, I guess, is that they've got past the GTD field, because as ever, the first 1 or 2 times you lap all the GTDs, they're very close together, so there's big gaps in the track. But actually now coming towards turn 1, no, sorry, just going to go for a push there from Linek, coming towards the braking zone of turn 1. Linek certainly lifting off, as look at that, the top 4, top 5 all close up as they're all trying to do a bit of lifting off, bit of saving fuel there. And as long as Marnek's still holding the lead, I guess it is working out, but of course it just makes it very sketchy for the drivers behind when the drivers ahead aren't doing the full pace. As we're going side by side there, Bo potentially losing this 3rd place as Hilalo gets there up the inside the international horseshoe, can't get the exit though, so Bo holds on to 3rd place.
Yeah, it is all about that momentum swing, and being able to use the outside line in some cases does give you sort of the better exit to be able to put your foot down and stay in front if you can just keep your nose ahead for the exit of the corner particularly. But Hilalo, you can tell, is definitely eyeing up that move and trying to find an avenue through, because while we have got a lot of cars so close sort of in tow in the slipstream together, it's only sort of the front 2-3 that can really make a difference and actually fight for the race lead. For P4 and backwards, it's quite a stretch, because yes, they're close to the action, but they're not quite close enough to really get involved. So for Hilalo, for him, he's going to want to try and be in sort of that front 3, so that if anything does happen, he's right in the mix, ready to sort of capitalize on the action. Yeah, it's just so much better to try and creep your way forward to the front of the pack. But at least for now, Bo is pretty content with that 3rd place and doesn't want to give it up at all. But it is interesting, because you learn a lot about your competitors as the race develops, who's going to be aggressive, and then you can use that information come sort of the final 5 minutes to really then start to plan your attacks.
And here goes Leitner and Halliburton there, trying to battle towards turn 1, or just trying to push each other, really. Halliburton there was, of course, right up at the front, battling for the leads in the opening stages of the race, but has dropped back over the course of the next few laps following that. And this battle, just look how close it is for the LMP2. So close between the sort of top 10 or so drivers as they all close up in this sort of opening part of the track. They generally spread out again, but then with all the lifting coasting into turn 1, they then just close all the way right back up. And that is why any of these drivers realistically could still be winning this race at the end of it. And of course, this is a race that you guys voted for in the RaceSpotTV Discord as well for the final time this season here at week 12 for the Friday night prime time here on RaceSpotTV. It's been a great season and of course a great way to end out the year in general in 2022. So we jump back to the GTD field. Here is second place man Dimitrov, second place, still about a second half, 1.7 behind Bernard, so that gap hasn't increased too much over the course of the last 5 minutes or so, but it has remained stable in terms of the positions in the top three.
Yeah, it all sort of settled down just a little bit because, it's just sort of everyone's sort of settling into their places, trying to get their heads down and focus on what's important. We're past sort of the buzz of the first few laps where people are trying to really be aggressive, trying to make those places forward. And now I think for Gordy Much, he's happy just to sit behind Dimitrov and maybe close the gap to Bernard if they can work together using the slipstream effectively, because Bernard at the moment, I stated out in front, hasn't really got anyone to work with. So maybe, the number 20 and the number 6 machines are working well together to try and bridge the gap. It is at the moment unsuccessful, and it is just sort of a stalemate at the moment. Everything's just reached an equilibrium. Oh my word, this is interesting. Going through turn number 1, this is pulling back onto the circuit, comes to number 8. Oh, that is very sketchy from Halliburton. Want to take another look as to how that one happened, because 3 cars going into turn 1, one of them sort of launched up in the air. That definitely wasn't your everyday incident.
Yeah, there's sort of 3-4 LMP2s involved in that one. I do wonder if that was the situation. We've just seen it so many times potentially coming up throughout the race where they just all close in on each other with some lift and coasting, I'm sure. Yeah, you're going to see there that black and blue car diving down the inside, spinning as that Halliburton gets spun. Then a couple of drivers at 32 there trying to slow down, 24 as well. But there's potentially, I think, 6 cars involved there. And just lucky really not to get some other drivers involved. Let's see there up the inside. Yeah, you can see number 8 Halliburton just being so conservative, but the number 30 there coming in, that was a Valente in the background, and unfortunately, yeah, the contact, as you see, just continued to happen.
Yeah, and we also saw the 32 Matthias Witt also having a bit of a drift into the side of people, maybe just slamming on the brakes to try to avoid. But yeah, a peculiar incident indeed, and really an unnecessary one as well. It could have very easily been avoided. But hey, turn 1, it's a very fast corner, particularly in these P2s. And when you've got so many cars around, you can get quite overwhelming. Mistakes do happen. You are only human. But yeah, it is a shame to see that happen. We've also got Minek and Soraya very close together in that fight for first. Bo also very close. We've got our top 5 all separated by about half a second. There goes Leitner looking to the outside, the number 13, trying to catapult himself ahead of Bo for P3. He at the moment is trying to take 4th from Ilhalo, but trying to do a Gordy Much and take 2 and 1, getting a little bit too greedy. So now you can see the number 17 back to the outside of the International Horseshoe, has to tuck back in and settle for 5th, but Leitner very aggressive there to the outside. And again, as we were talking about earlier, everyone's so conservative, sort of taking that inside line to defend and work sort of for the greater good, save a bit of fuel or whatever. If you're committed enough on the outside, you can definitely make up a lot of time just by the extra track that you've got to be able to brake with, and also everyone Constantinoing up on the inside. The outside line is basically free pickings, and Leitner knows that and has just used it to their full advantage.
It's such a wide part of the track coming through turn 1 there, coming off, of course, the tri-oval section. It really widens on the inside of turn 1, and you can do so many lines through that corner. And of course, some of these drivers, they're doing 200 meters of lift and close, even clutching in as well, trying to save that fuel. So if you're coming in flat out, bear in mind, they're doing about 200 miles an hour as you come in there as well. So if you come flat out, you're gaining so much distance on the cars ahead, and you can really use all of the track available because it is just so wide. But as we saw just a few minutes ago, that can lead to crashes, so you have to do so fairly carefully. But as it stands, 20 minutes left of this race and of the season as well. Any drivers coming in, not just yet at the front here. So still pushing Lineneck along, just a tenth between them as we come across the line. 2 tenths covers the top 3 as we're coming easily in towards this second half of the race now, as we're getting some side-by-side action there. The number 17 Hilal all the way around the outside there. Can he hold on with Leitner side-by-side through turn number 2? Space just about given between, and there is the position got for Hilal. But now we're seeing Leitner trying to also potentially hold on to that position, maybe losing another one on the exit of the International Horseshoe there. Kovalak on the outside now. That would be the inside of the kink coming towards the Western Horseshoe. Side-by-side between the 2. Space given. That is what we like to see. The 12 and the 13 still side-by-side in the braking zone, and that is great battling. Leitner really trying to hold on to this. He's going to push it wide on the exit, just about hold on to that one, but that was a bit naughty. Oh, in the background. Number 12 goes spinning and unfortunately collects other cars in the background, and he was just, I think Zach pushed off a little bit there, too much on the exit.
Yeah, just a little bit unfortunate for the number 30 of Valenti to be collected in an incident that he had no part in whatsoever. But Leitner, oh, that's interesting, just to drive straight into the barrier. Not, that is certainly one way to do things in the number 19 for Smith. But for Leitner, trying to sort of discourage the move to the outsides. You could argue, yes, it was his corner, but I do think definitely Kovacic did warrant a bit more racing room than that. Bit of contact, looked to be okay, but just got a bit of a snap, and unfortunately that sent them round. You can see there just that little tap over the bump. That was what did it, because of how reliant these cars are, how low they are to the ground, relying obviously on the underbody and a lot of aerodynamics. Any shift in that balance can really send them flying. And really unsettle the car. So yeah, for Kovacic, that was the cause of it. And if that happened sort of at a more flat part of the circuit, it probably would have been okay. This is the number 19 of Smith, and as to what happened to them, a good move to the outside of the Western Horseshoe, it must be said. Kept that momentum going, though. What drove him to just completely straight line this left-hander, or was it just a bit of a mistake, bit of contact, and then sort of locked together that sent them just careering straight into that tyre barrier, which is a shame, because for both of them, that was a good bit of racing up until then.
Yeah, when he had contact and pressure on the rear, obviously he's turning left, but then there's been pressure put on his rear right, turning the car obviously away from the apex, so he just couldn't turn into the corner, unfortunately. And just collecting a Valenti as well, who was trying to let them go on the exit. But that was, a little bit naughty from Kovacic and Leitner there, really, from Leitner's point of view, just pushing him a little bit wide. But of course, there's very little overlap by that point. As Soray's dropped down into 5th place as well, so he's had an issue here and there, as Leitner's up into that 4th place after battling with that the car of Kovacic there on that previous lap. As we're seeing a lot of drivers now coming in. Those LMP2s are the ones who are battling, damaging repairs, but these GTD cars coming in with 17 minutes to go. Let's see who saved the most fuel and is going to save a second or so. That is not going to be 7 seconds there, as that the car 9th place of Gamez there is going to be having a slightly longer stop.
Yeah, again, it seems something so trivial, something so easy, just to stop in your pit box and be able to fuel up the car, because it's not. It can be so tricky just to actually pull into the right pit stop, particularly when the pit lane's so busy, when there's so much things going on around you, to be able to spot your marks and get it stopped. And even if you're marginally out, you have to stop, realize you've messed up, reverse, stop again, and then by that time you've lost 2-3 seconds minimum. And it is such an easy time loss to make, but again comes with the pressure of the pit stops. And another thing that will play into the pit strategy, yes, it is only for fuel, but you still have to get into the pit lane and out of it as effectively as possible. This is the fight for second that we're seeing now between Deeth and Dimitrov. Deeth done a fantastic job in that pit stop sequence to catapult themselves up in a 2nd place ahead of the number 20 machine just in behind, but Bernard's still retaining that around about 1.5 second lead. So same old for the number 1 machine after the pit stop sequence, which I guess for him is all he could ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. That is what you want to come out as well with, 2.5 advantage. That is a really nice indeed. And Deeth obviously doing a good job, maybe with the fuel saving, maybe with the braking in towards the pit limiter line as well. Just gaining a couple of tenths, getting ahead of Dimitrov. That is certainly what you want to do. And that is the whole point of the pit stop as well. Just adding a bit of spice into the race. And the top 3 really now have started to pull away. Steinbrat in there in 4th place has dropped off by a few seconds, and Pradi and Much as well, also losing some time over the last few laps in the pit stop sequence as well. Much especially losing a bit more than he would have wanted for the R8G driver, but is now trying to get back up into the top 5. He's got Prandi just ahead of him, the number 22 machine there, just half a second between the two. So I think the Scottish driver will be all over the back of him with the slipstream coming down towards turn 1.
Yeah, the slipstream does give you such a big advantage, especially at Daytona. We saw it earlier on with the LMP2s, just how much time they can gain so quickly because of the hole in the air that the car in front is punching. You're not particularly using too much in the way of aero around Daytona, because you still need the straight line speed for the oval, but you are still using quite a bit. That was a good run there from the number 6 machine of Gordy Much through turn number 1. Could allow him the open door in towards the international horseshoe. Not quite close enough to go for the move, but using using that turn 1 to aid his offensive position and just closing the gap up to Prandy, and for much what could have been a good good showing for the race victory, or at least a podium. Now is the fringes of the top 5, which isn't bad at all, not anything to frown about, but for what the potential that he showed during that first stint, something must have just gone slightly wrong in the pit lane to see him now only in fighting for 5th.
Yeah, I definitely think it can change around quickly in this series, of course. We mentioned previously how having effective spec series is there. Gordy March gets a good run, or maybe Prandy gets a bad run, potentially with a slowdown actually from cutting the inside, because that seemed to be a bit weird to slow down there as much now as getting pushed along in the background. Is that Castro trying to get involved? Yeah, it is. Castro, the number 10 machine, pushing along three-way battle as come towards the Le Mans chicane. And I think Prandy there just having a little bit too much curbing, because I didn't see any other reason why he would have to slow down at that point of the track. And it was actually the worst point as well, because then you lose the time all the way down the back straight, as you mentioned before. The momentum is so crucial around here, but March up into 5th place. He'll be loving that one.
He will be indeed 2022 Britcar Praga Cup champion as well as Gordy March. So I'm sure this 5th place isn't all he's going to be celebrating from 2022, but certainly something that he can certainly enjoy on this good old Friday evening. To jump into an official race and just get on and succeed. And it is awesome to see the transition from real life into the sim racing world, how successful you can be. Here comes Deeth into the pit lane. So from 2nd place, he just had come into the pit lane, if I'm not mistaken. He was up there in 2nd place. Much is now fallen down the timing tower, outside now of the top 10. But yeah, for Deeth, maybe a bit of contact between himself and the number 20 machine of Dimitrov, because yeah, to see him into the pit lane again, I'm not too sure, unless he hadn't pit. But yeah, no, that's strange.
Or because he did gain some time. I guess he didn't gain that much in the pit stop. I'm just wondering, maybe he didn't change something. I don't know. That is a bit of a weird one, as you say. It's coming so close, and if it was maybe a drive-through penalty or something like that, it would have gone straight through. But he has gone back into the box, which is a weird one. But that has really ruined his chances of a good position, because he will never be able to get back from that one. As coming towards the front there, Mlinek leading the way now from Bo, as they have just pulled away from the guys who are now obviously starting to come into the pit lane as well. But also Soraya, they're losing a lot of time, as you mentioned, in the early parts of the race. 17 and 13 there, both coming in, as we've also got Valenti there, I think, still repairing his damage. So this is definitely the pit stop window for the LMP2s, and they have of course got not much fuel to take in to the end of the race. Just obviously 11.5 minutes, but going that extra lap could be a second or so, a couple of seconds saved for these guys at the front. So we could see a little bit of a change in the order when they come out of the pit lane.
For sure, the longer they go, the less fuel they have to put back into the car to be able to get to the end, providing they are running the tanks dry. But yeah, prime time for the P2s to be coming into the pit lane. So that is again why the first opening stages of the race, while the first sort of 2/3 of the race are so crucial, is because you use that time to save some fuel and put yourself into such a good position for this point right here. Yes, it takes a lot of sort of mental capacity to be able to sort of resist the temptation to just send a move to the inside, really get involved, really rag the nuts off the car and run at such high PMs for so long, not lift and coast and just push the car to its absolute limit. But all you're doing is going to be slowing yourself down. You're going to enjoy the first sort of 20-25 minutes, but then you're really going to start to feel the effects, the consequences of the actions when you get to this point, where everyone around you who's been safe and who's been sensible then comes into the pit lane. Bit of a peculiar moment here between Milek and Bo. Bo comes in, and then very late the 14 decides to also switch into the pit lane. Now our top 3 are all down into the pit lane, and it is just a race against time to see where they emerge relative to everyone else.
Yeah, who has got the shortest stop? Because you're also right. It depends also how much, I guess, they have in their tank as well. Because if they've saved even another half a lap, so enough that they had to pit this lap, they couldn't do one more. But even if they have that half a lap, those couple of litres might be enough here and there to be those few tenths. Mine there with 11.1. It's that Bo with a 13.6. There's 2.5 seconds different potentially between the two. But Mlanek still holding on to the lead there as they come out nose to tail, coming back for the lead. LMP2's coming around the first corner there, but nowhere near enough. Mlanek still going to be leading the way as a Hiliao there comes up into 3rd place. Soraya back into 4th on the exit with Leitner in 5th place there. So still 5 cars within 4 seconds at the front. So it certainly opened out quite a lot, but it's still a very close battle just to the end of this race in the last 9.5 minutes.
Yeah, not long left to go at all, and time definitely is not on their side, but it is for sure a 2-horse race between the 14 and 31 machines, unless they start to fight and bring the likes of Ilhajo and Soraya back into the mix. So that is a bit of a stretch, I think, for these two. They are just going to use the fact that it is going to be easier to win a 1v1 than it is to have two other cars join the fight. So for them, maybe just to work together until we get sort of to the final couple of laps, and then start to fight and then settle it amongst themselves, rather than that unnecessary risk they carry of bringing other cars into the mix. But that might not be what's going through their head for Bo. He might just want to go for the move, get it over and done with, and then try and maintain that track position. It does vary from driver to driver, but yeah, what a race we're seeing, and still close emerging after the pit lane sequence. Of course, it is often easy for the pack to spread and things like that as soon as you get to the pit stops. We are seeing some very close racing here, and Bo, there you go, on board with just bump drafting, at least for now. The fight for third also rages on just in behind.
I'm trying to remember what series it was. I think it was back at week 6 where the Porsche Cup Open Spa-Francorchamps, and there was a very similar situation to what I think we're going to see here, where they're going to just slipstream each other, keep it so it's sort of just a top 2 battle, and then they're going to start batting at the end. And it is the same in the GTD category. Bernard has been caught. Dimitrov there, just less than a tenth behind, push drafting all the way to the line with 8 minutes to go in this race. And I think we're going to see in both cases, in both classes, it's going to be a 2-way battle for the lead. And I think it's going to come down to the final lap between now. I think it's going to be a last lap lunge from one or the other to try and get this lead. Is it back in the GTD field? Look at this for the lower places. Goody much there on the outside, trying to go side by side through the 22 there on the inside. Obviously things happening between these drivers already. There's Prandy on the inside, or the outside I should say, come into the international horseshoe side by side still as Goody much manages to hold on. But a huge battle here from 4th place down in the GTD field.
Yeah, it's really awesome to see. Also, that fight for first between Bernard and Dimitrov, that might start to materialise. But yeah, remaining quite close between a number of cars. So really looking forward to seeing how this one pans out. It's a shame this isn't for the fight for the lead, because having 6 cars fighting for that would be pretty sensational. With only 7 minutes left to go. Unfortunately, we used up all our luck with that one in the opening stages. But now you can see there Thompson, the number 3 machine, leading the way, at least for now. Has got Grand Force, Castro, and Much also, Watson, Much and Prandy all in tow and closing the gap up. So you really are so vulnerable leading the way. But right now they're using sort of this data of leading the way on that run to the line, all in preparation to know where they want to be come that final lap.
Yeah, I'd actually quite recognise that. Josh Thompson there getting up into P4. He started from the back of the grid, remember, in this GTD field. So is that for the position? If it is, he's done a great strategy to get up there, get past all these drivers, and that is certainly a very, very good job indeed from Team Redline driver. Obviously up into that 4th place as it stands. Grand Force now going to the outside as we come through the tri-oval section. Can Grand Force get all the way towards the front of this battle? Yes, he can, as Josh Thompson lifts off a little bit. It's down the inside. Castro goes there in that number 10 machine, trying to hold it on the inside line, side by side with Watson on the outside, coming through turn 2. Now, very difficult. Kingbo, we've seen side-by-side drivers do that so far. He hasn't been able to make that position, but Watson holding on very nicely indeed. Castro in the 4th place of this little battle.
Yeah, and the fight will still continue to rage on. They are a little bit off the fight for the podium, so Steinbratton is sort of just in no man's land trying to bring it home in 3rd place. But 5.5 minutes left in what has been a 45-minute showdown here for week number 12 of Friday Night Primetime for the IMSA iRacing official series. And it has just been such a cracker, such a season as well. And honestly, couldn't have asked for much better to round off. Of course, we saw the Imola in the RO4s round off season number 3. That was some way to sort of put an end to what was an amazing narrative of a season. But this definitely is up there with between both races that we've got, with the P2s and the GTDs all coming all the way down to the wire in the fights for first, particularly also the fights for sort of the mid-pack positions as well. It's been so sensational and really still right now we're on our toes as to, and we don't know what the result's going to be, and I think that is all you can ask for a late stage in a race.
Yes, it's great to see that the battles are continuing, obviously, towards the end of the race, especially for the lead in both categories. It hasn't been one driver pulling away. It's been top two, ironically, in both categories as well. But you do see this a lot of the time where you get similar situations happening in different classes as well, and similar gaps, because just seems to be the way it works. There's always a couple of drivers towards the top of each field, and here in the GTD category, of course, is just continuing, and this battle here a little bit further down for fourth place is just going to go on and on. Loads of drivers now catching up to the back of the battle as well, and as it stands, Ground Force still leading the way there from Thompson, and in the background, diving up the inside there, one of the LMP2s trying to break up this battle a little bit, but it seems like they all hold on to their positions for now, and of course the LMP2s are potentially going to be a factor in these battles when we get to the last couple of laps, because the P2s themselves don't want to give up any time at that part of the race either.
Yeah, it is some unnecessary stress for a lot of these guys. They're going to be hoping that if they could have just waited, or the timing of lapping could have come at a bit more of a better time. But it doesn't care about your feelings at all. The pace difference between the P2s and the GTDs are going to line up at some point, and unfortunately for them, it's right at the probably the most tense moment of the race right now in the final moments. So fortunately for a number of these cars, they're going to catch them at the prime opportunity in NASCAR 3 and 4, just to be able to lap cleanly. But as we saw in the first lap in stage of cars going off, that really did spice some things up. So do expect maybe a bit of a shake-up potentially, but yeah, I think people are going to just try and knuckle down and get through this unscathed, because yeah, survival is one thing, and you've for sure got to be in it to win it. But now it could be sort of a tool, a vehicle to maybe get that move done that you couldn't quite previously do. If you can see a P2 lap in your rival and you can see a gap to the inside, you might be able to use that to your advantage. So it'll be to the detriment of others, and obviously to the delight of some others as well. One man's trash, another man's treasure, and that could definitely apply in these later stages. We see this fight at the moment for second place. Soraya up into second as Bo tucks in behind on that run out of the Le Mans chicane.
Yeah, that was an interesting sequence of events. They're giving a huge bump to Bo coming out onto the back straight. A really big one as well, trying to push him along, but Bo not really wanting to get involved in that. I guess in the end, just letting Soraya through. Soraya's trying to catch down, but it's now 2 seconds between Mlanek and Soraya there. Soraya obviously starting on that pole position, would have been wanting to get a nice win today, but Mlanek's done well from a few rows back, so 5th, 6th place. He was on the grid and is now in a fairly comfortable position. But 2 minutes to go, a couple of laps to go in this race before we see who's going to be the winner. But as it stands, Monek's got sort of, I'd say, a big enough gap to really hold on to this, but Soraya's already caught up 2 or 3 tenths.
Yeah, and that slipstream really able to keep people in touch. It doesn't matter if you're a couple of tenths of a lap quicker than the car behind, because they've got the benefit of the slipstream. They just get dragged along with you and can use the deficit that they or the gain that they get down through the ovals and the slipstream to make up for the deficit that they lose during the infield sections and corners that you can outdrive them in. So yeah, it does make for some frustrated cars trying to overtake, but it does make for some delighted new attackees to be able to actually still be in the fight. It's a shame that Mlanek has actually careered off into the distance to sort of solidify the race win, but never say never. They might make a mistake or whatever. That is really clutching at short straws, but Mlanek has been doing a fantastic job in that number 14 machine to pretty much dominate this race. They've been the only car, I think, of the P2 field that seems so calm and composed all throughout, and they've always been sort of in that top 2 fight for the entirety of it. So of anyone, I think they do deserve this win, because they've just been so consistent and so on it from the first lap.
Yeah, it's certainly been a longer battle for these drivers getting towards the front, but it's working out. Last lap time now, 30 seconds to go, and Bo's actually dropped down another place. He drops down to 4th. Is he struggling on fuel here? Leitner's got past as well. Bo's having some big troubles here in the final couple of laps. He was looking at potentially even fighting for first a few laps ago, but now he's down in 5th place. And to be honest, he should be able to hold on to that 6th place, but if he's unfortunate, might be dropping even further back. That is not what the number 31 machine would have been wanting, but of course maybe a fuel situation, miscalculating by 1 lap, who knows, maybe some damage on that car. because of course there he dropped off massively already from Mlynek. But final lap, as it says on the top left of the screen, and the final lap of the season, Zach, it's certainly been a crazy one with the community voting. We haven't known what is coming up every week, but it's certainly been a very interesting one, and we hope to potentially continue this format going forward.
Fingers crossed, because it has worked and it's put on such a show. The last 12 weeks have been such a thrill and such a roller coaster ride. We've had some really, really high highs and, you know, not so many lows as well. We've never really had a dull race at all. We've been to so many different disciplines and it's just been fantastic. And here we go, Mlynek on the run to the line to round off this season. What a season it's been.
Yeah, you have been voting all season for the categories of racing. Today, it was the IMSA iRacing series, and it's going to be Maciej Mlynek for Netrex coming across the line to win for the LMP2s. A very dominant drive indeed. He had the racecraft, he had the fuel strategy as well, and he managed to get up from 5th place at one point, back to the front, and then never really changed places. And to the front, though, of the GTD category, we have got another lap. They were just ahead of the leaders, so we're getting almost a full extra lap here, and Bernard has been closed down by Dimitrov over the course of this stint, and it's just a couple of tenths between them as we come out onto NASCAR 1 and 2.
Yeah, not separated by much at all, and they've been at each other's throats for pretty much the entirety of the race. Bernard did seem to get a bit of a margin versus Dimitrov, but in these last stages really been able to close the gap, and in the slipstream, vital moment for these two on the run to the line. It's going to be a drag race. Could we see as close to finish as we saw in the IndyCars?
Let's see side by side between the two. Bernard there trying to defend off Dimitrov, trying to, as you see, just drop back a little bit. He's trying to get a bit of slingshot, trying to get that slipstream towards the line. But has Bernard got enough lead? 3.5 tenths of a second towards the line. And all he can do now is stay flat out and get those gear shifts absolutely perfect. Does Dimitrov have enough in his Porsche, fighting against another Porsche, equal power? But it looks like it's going to be Bernard towards the line. But no, maybe not. Maybe it's going to be Dimitrov coming through the tri-oval side by side, as so close it is, but Dimitrov just misses out on that one. Bernard gets the victory, 46 thousandths of a second, and that is a very good race for Bernard there, holding on. Dimitrov did everything that he could, but in the end, just not enough. As we see that, I think that is Goody Much coming across the line as well. Great battle between all those drivers there in both categories. It was certainly a very entertaining race, a lot of overtaking and a few crashes here and there, and of course the strategy as well. Coming down to the final lap in both categories, that is just what you want to see, Zach Sweeney.
It really is. As we said countless times over the course of that race, we couldn't have asked for more to round off the brilliance that we've had over the last 3 months of season 4 of Friday Night Primetime. It's been such a privilege to be able to commentate alongside Cam and Roger. We've also had Will Chadwick join us for a couple of rounds as well when Cam couldn't be here. And yeah, it's just been so fantastic, and it's a shame to see it end. We'll be back, fingers crossed, for the new year and kickstart us off. But yeah, just what a race that was. So much action, so much carnage, so much chaos. Yeah, again, there's not really much that can do it justice. It was just spectacular.
Absolutely. And here are the results. 29 laps, and Ilke Habala there getting the fastest lap on lap 12. But it was Maciej Mlynek there getting the victory in the end by 2.5 seconds from Soraya Hiliao there in third place, with Leitner in fourth, just 4 seconds behind as well as Christian Bow there, who potentially had some fuel issues towards the end, 5.5 seconds off the lead. He could have potentially battled for victory on another day. Blocker, Stix, Stewart, Valero and Ritter there rounding out the top 10. Halliburton there also starting at on the front row. He's going to be disappointed, but of course was involved in that crash. Then Thompson, Kovalak as well. He had a couple of issues for Valenti as well. Harper, Smith and Ibrahim there rounding out the top 17 for the LMP2 field. But of course, that wasn't the only category on the field. We do have the GTDs as well, where we saw that almost photo finish towards the end. Bernard got it from Dimitrov there by 46 thousandths of a second, and both of them pulled away from the mid-pack. We had Steinbraten there 6.5 off the lead in Grand Fours, 8.6. Josh Thompson there doing a good job to get up in towards the top 5, with Watson and Much just behind Much as well. Also, I think he'll be disappointed with how that race ended, as he was up in third place at one point. Then we got Sjevlik there in that 8th place, with Gamez and Castro rounding out the top 10, as this GTD field certainly spread out a little bit over the course of the race. It was looking very close at the beginning. Prandy there and Alacron there rounding out the top 12. We got Cheryl and Kresiovic Kreshkovsky, I should say, top 14. Tyne and Deeth there as well, also having slightly disappointing days with Garcia, Ferguson and Caniero rounding out the top 19. And certainly a very good way to end the season, Zach Sweeney, having a multi-class race. That was the first one of the season, and we've had 12 incredible weeks of action. We had something different every single week. The community have been voting, and I think it was definitely a successful format.
For sure successful, and it was great to get such a community involvement. We had sort of upwards of over 100 votes week in, week out on a very wide plethora of different avenues in terms of sim racing and the disciplines that we had. We had, we had trucks, we had Indy cars, we had the P2s and the GTDs that we had today, we had GT4s, we had some single seaters, we had the Spec Racer Ford of all things, we had just everything that you could have asked for, everything that we could fit in the 12 weeks that we had. We did indeed, and it was all chosen by you guys at home, enjoying the series and wanting to get involved, wanting to have your say, and just being able to go to different things that we didn't often see in the world of sim racing, that don't quite get their spot in the limelight. And I think it was very, very important in order to give some of these disciplines their spot in the limelight and just to have them on broadcast. Of course, the challenge of just jumping into the random official sessions at that time and just seeing what the racing they were going to have on offer. No set championship or anything like that, just week in, week out, jumping into a different series and just rolling with it. And I for one have really, really enjoyed it. I think everyone else at home has, and I think I can speak on everyone involved who's been involved on the Primetime broadcast, that again, we've all really enjoyed it as well. So yeah, it really has been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a great avenue to show what is available here on the iRacing service. And if you want to get yourself involved with any of the series that you've seen and that we showcase over the course of the season, then do, of course, sign yourself up and work your way through the licenses and the ranking system. And potentially you'll be in the top splits that we stream every Friday night and also on other races here on RaceSpotTV. But that is it for this season and this year in general with the Friday night prime time as well. We had 4 seasons, 48 weeks of racing. Has been crazy. We had multiple different championships, and it's been good to end here at Daytona. Myself, Cameron Rogers, Zach Sweeney, been in the booth, and of course Will Chadwick for some races in the season. Zach Johnson behind the scenes on the cameras and production as well. But we thank you for watching this year, and we look forward to seeing you in 20